Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everyone, I am really delighted to introduce today's guest, Susan Barber. Susan is a leading visibility coach who helps quiet, high-achieving corporate leaders step into the spotlight and become visible, valued, and influential. With over 25 years of leadership experience at Kraft Heinz, Susan understands the challenges of corporate life. She is the author of Your Journey to Visibility Workbook, The Visibility Factor, and the host of the Visibility Factor podcast. Through her coaching and work, Susan empowers professionals to embrace their unique strengths, grow their influence, and take their careers to the next level. Please join me in welcoming Susan Barber. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Really happy to have you here. So, as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to begin at the beginning. So, take us back to your formative years and how they may or may not have informed where you are today.
Yes, I had a lot of different experiences that I think informed the way I am today, and also a lot of changes that I went through as I learned more about myself as a leader and now as an entrepreneur. I think the thing that I recognized early on is that I followed a lot of probably what a lot of women have experienced, conditioning to be sitting quietly, to not speak up, be seen, not heard, kind of that language, unfortunately. And I really, just leaned into that probably too much. And as a firstborn child, also a lot of perfectionism and people pleasing. So all of those things contributed, I think, to many challenges that I had as I continued to climb the ladder at Kraft, in addition to having a bit of imposter syndrome. I worked in different parts of the organization, sales, supply chain, food service, and IT. And when I got to IT, that's the place where imposter syndrome kicked into high gear because my degrees are not IT degrees. And it was really one of those moments where I just felt like I didn't belong at the table, so to speak. And so I sat in the back of the room, and those are things that really impacted me. My visibility wasn't there. And that set me off on this journey to figure out how can I be visible in a way that works for me and then teach others how to do it as well.
So let's go back to the early years a little bit and how that even evolved to that point, where there you were in more of an IT role and you started to feel like you were, walking around almost in someone else's skin, so to speak. So what did you study in school?
My degrees are management and marketing, and my MBA is in marketing as well. And so I really had planned to go into marketing. That was the plan. And when I got my first job in Chicago, that was in a totally different industry, totally different thing. And I knew it was a short-term experience for me because I was going to be getting married and moving to Georgia. And so I really just wanted to get some experience on my resume, to be honest, and, learn a little bit about what it's like to work in the workplace and all those kinds of things. And so for me, it was just trying to figure out how can I adapt to what I'm learning here? How can I work with people that I don't know? All of those things that you go through at your first job, and there's a lot of learnings there. And in the workbook, I have an entire story about that experience, which had a lot of aha moments for myself in that moment. But it's just part of, I think we all go through these learning experiences and we have to take the good from them and kind of leave the bad that isn't really serving us. So
Yeah.
when I was in this imposter syndrome moment, it was all of that, I think, related to education. And I see that a lot with clients. I don't have the right education to work with these people, or I don't have enough education, or I don't know enough yet to be able to do it. And so I definitely went through that, but it was interesting to me. I don't know, I didn't have a name for it at that point. I didn't know about imposter syndrome at that
Yeah.
point. So I didn't know what to call it. I just thought I was the only one going through it.
Mm.
And that is, I think the hardest part is why we hide that. We don't tell anybody that it's happening. And I see that in a lot of clients too. There's just a little bit of shame or hiding happening and they don't even know it.
So, what had you been doing before you were moving into that more IT oriented role? And what did you have a choice or were you placed there? I mean, I'm curious about where you were you in that more, going along with people pleasing kind of stance that you were, you know, either promoted or, moved into something and maybe other people had more confidence in your ability to step into something a little different or newer and and you just were like, a deer in the headlights almost.
Yeah, I think all of that probably happened along the way, but I started in sales. And when I went into supply chain, I worked in our first commingled distribution center where Kraft, General Foods, and Oscar Mayer products all lived in one distribution center. It was the first one for Kraft. And of course, there were some growing pains with an experience like that where systems don't talk to each other and all of that. And that is where I really first recognized the fact that although I don't have IT degrees, I understood how the systems were talking to each other. And part of my role as a trainer at one time was to start to figure out where are the orders, where are the invoices, why aren't they going through? And so I established this reputation of being this person who headquarters could rely on. Oh, well, if
Ah.
Sue has looked at it and it's not there, well, then it's not there. And so I kind of enjoyed that. I learned a lot by doing that and how all these systems talk to each other. And that led to relationships then that when I came to Chicago to work on a food service program, I continued to work with IT at that point. So I was always working with them more as like a client, not directly in the organization.
Mm.
And I think those, your personal brand goes a long way to help people see you. And so I think for me, it was, oh, she's doing all these great things. She understands it all. But when you start to move into IT, there's expectations that you're going to understand how to lead an IT program. You're going to understand how to lead the resources and all of that. And I think that's where I started to feel like, oh gosh, maybe I'm a little bit over my skis here. I don't know if I know enough to do that. And I have to say, Kraft did some great things for me, one of which was to send me to an IT program for business people. So it was a
Oh,
6-month program and I was pregnant with my second child. So it was an amazing gift they gave me. I went to class 4 days a week and I went to work 1 day a week. So they paid for the program, they paid for
wow.
me to continue to do that, and, I'm 6 months or so pregnant at that time. So it was really a gift because it taught me a lot about the language and how to bring programs together, and all the people that I was in the class with were at that time, IT was becoming this booming thing, and everybody wanted to get into IT, and so there were a lot of people in there looking for roles, trying to transition from the business side into IT. So I learned a lot. It was a really great opportunity for me. And I came back into a role after I had my second child that was me leading programs and leading all of the things in IT. And that is, it gave me a lot of confidence at that point. But then as you climb to the next level, it starts all over again. And as a director, you have a lot of more expectations, that you're expected to deliver. You're leading multiple teams, leading managers now. You have a lot more influence. And I think, when you get closer to the executive team, you start to think about should I be part of that team? Is that something I aspire to do? And as you start to see the inside view of how things work, it starts to make you doubt yourself like, "Oh, I don't know if I could do that, or I don't know if I could lead that." It's all those limiting beliefs we kind of pull out when we need them to stay safe. And I did that on a regular basis.
So I'm curious about the juxtaposition of all that kind of questioning of yourself, which sounds like look, many of us do that, right? It's almost an ingrained habit, almost part of our DNA in some ways. And we have to we have to notice it as it's happening to be able to find a different way
Yeah.
to move through. How are we going to ever learn anything if we don't step through some of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then also understanding that, how your work with the visibility factor came out of that, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to show up with what you do bring to the table. And also it's okay to show up with what you don't know and be able to ask the right kinds of questions.
Yeah.
But showing up is really important, right?
Step one.
Yeah. My curiosity about this also is that you were both, kind of riddling yourself with your, self-doubts about some of this, but also noticing it, almost like recording it at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure that everybody allows themselves to kind of notice it while they're going through it. I think some people just riddle themselves with it, and that could destroy a career in some ways.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen to you.
Well, it might have happened after I got some feedback. I think up until the point I got the feedback that I wasn't being visible enough, I was considered a top talent. I was doing all the things that I thought I should do, and I was getting rewarded in many ways. So when I found out that people didn't think I was being visible enough and that that messaging didn't only come from this person, but from the senior leadership, that really almost, I don't know, I felt like, do I have a career anymore? Have I ruined everything? And the interesting thing about it was I was complacent, I think, just because was considered a top talent. I thought, I've made it, I've done all the things, and didn't realize that I was sitting in the back of the room, that I wasn't participating in meetings as much as I could have, that I wasn't really owning the fact that I was in this great opportunity of this leadership program and having a wonderful team and all those things. I wasn't really owning that because I was so in my head about I don't belong there.
Mm,
So I think it can happen internally in many ways and, all evidence to the contrary externally, right? I'm doing all the right things. Everyone's rewarding me for that. But it was something that I didn't even realize I was doing. I was self-sabotaging to not go to the next level.
mm,
And I was causing myself to sit in the back of the room so that it was safer. So, like things like that, I was doing, not even consciously, but I can look at them now and see plain as day that that is what I was doing just to
mm.
stay safe.
Yeah. Well, and my guess is that, until someone pointed that out to you, there's a way in which some of them were also, allowing that to happen too. I mean, I always say things like that are a two-way street, you know, that there's a way in which if there's somebody I'll give you a great example. I was talking to a client the other day who is an introvert, and her two levels above her, there's a VP or senior VP who, has recognized that she's on the quieter side, but he clearly recognizes that she's also talented. And he has said things to her like, "We need to work on your confidence." Well, that's a great way for her to feel a lack of confidence, right?
Correct. Yeah.
You need to speak up more. Oh, that's a great thing to say to introverts. When in
Yeah.
fact, it might not be that she has a lack of confidence. It may be that she's an introvert and she's a quieter presence. Not to say that introverts don't need to find places to use their voice, right? I mean, this is
Mhm.
part of the visibility factor too, right? You
Right.
need to find those places to use your voice. And so when I was talking with her about it, we talked about how can she convey to him that her quietness may not be a lack of confidence, but it may be a sign of her, introversion, and that she tends to be more thoughtful before she speaks up, and that she will assure him that when she has something to say, she will speak up,
Yes.
you know?
100%.
Yeah.
And I was definitely more of an introvert as well. So I know that that probably also played into it. And wanting to ask the perfect question and wanting to make sure I said the right thing. And so I do think, as an introvert, it's easy to get in your head and not want to get the spotlight put on you for judgment or criticism. It's really easy to just keep playing smaller and smaller, and it becomes the norm then before you realize it. And that is really a lot of the things that I went through with that feedback and all of that experiences. All the things I learned, I wanted to take and give to someone in a book that they could all leverage and use, because I can only talk to one-on-one people as much as I can, right? I can present in companies and do all the things that I'm doing with workshops, but I wanted to scale this message out to let people know that it's okay. You can do it in your own way and make it feel very comfortable to you authentically. You don't have to do it like everyone else. And I
Right.
think that was all I saw, was
Right.
bragging and all of this, overly self-promotion people
Right.
that just didn't feel like me.
So once you got that feedback, did you also get any kind of support, advice, or suggestions about how people were hoping you would show up more?
Well, not from that person, which was the interesting moment of I first I heard it, I got defensive. I think it's just
Sure.
normal to have that feeling. And I tried to ask a question and I could quickly tell, you should just stop talking, Sue. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to help you right now. And so I thanked her for the feedback. And then I went to meet with a business mentor of mine. So in this program, we got business mentors as well. And I said, here's the feedback I got. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what actions to take. She wasn't really very clear. And she said, let me decode it for you. Here's what she means. She means you were hired for a role and you have responsibilities to speak up when you know information that could help your senior leadership team make a decision. And if that is something you're holding back because you're concerned about how it will look, then that's on you that they make a bad decision.
Mm.
So, of course, I never wanted that. And the second thing we talked about was how I'm not only holding myself back, but also holding my team back. The work that we're doing, I'm making that invisible because I'm not talking about it. And I'm the one in the room who has to talk about it. So all of those things, I never wanted to hurt my team. I definitely didn't want to hurt my own reputation. And I didn't want anyone to make bad decisions because I didn't share something. So it was good advice to really help me start to reframe how I could sit at the table, how I could very visibly show up and ask questions and be prepared in advance so that it's not that moment of panic. I would have everything ready to go. And it just changed a lot of the things in how I showed up to everyone. And then I brought my team to the table too. And of course, they were nervous to do that. They were much more shy than even I was. And so it was a really good experience to see them start to kind of come out of their shells too. And it was funny though. I'll just tell you, the first time I went and sat at that table, it was very normal for all the executives to sit there. And so I thought, well, the only way I can get there is to be first and to sit there. And when they walked in, they all kind of looked at me like, why is she at the table today? Is she presenting today? I don't understand, like, what's happening. But I thought, what better visible way could I show I'm being bolder? I'm being visible. I'm doing all the things that I said was going to do. And then when I brought my team in, it was when they would present stuff. And so it really changed the way I think people started to see me, that I was really taking that feedback to heart and doing something with it, which I could have just said, hey, I think you're wrong, and blew it off. But I knew she wouldn't have told me that. First of all, she didn't care about my success. And second of all, if she wasn't right. So I took it and ran with it. And that's kind of led me down this path to the books and in this world I'm in now.
I'm curious, the person who initially gave you the feedback, did they circle back to you at all and make
No,
a
no, not at all. Which is interesting. And that was just her style. She's like, I'm going to share this with you, but it's up to you what to do with it. And so I never really got feedback from her. And I've seen her recently even and still no feedback. But I didn't expect her to necessarily like, good job, Sue. You've got books out there. That's just not her style.
Yeah.
So it was fine. But I do am eternally grateful to her for sharing it. No one else did, right? Other people probably saw it. No one said anything. So, without her saying that, I would have continued down this path of not being visible, sitting in the back of the room, not participating. So to me, it was a gift. And I think anybody who gets feedback like that, that's tough to hear. You can choose to, take it in and do something with it, or you can choose to ignore it. And for me, it was just not an option to ignore it at that point. Because even, let's just say I left the company because of it, the same thing would happen somewhere else. So it's not like you're going to
Yeah,
get rid of it, right? It's
right,
going to show up again. And
right.
it actually did show up as I started my business, but we can save that for another part of the conversation. It's just fascinating.
And you had been with the company for many years at that
Yes.
point when you got that feedback. So clearly you had been showing up enough and you had been visible enough to be moved through, several iterations of positions and levels within the company. So you were doing something right.
Yeah, I worked really hard. I worked a lot of hours. I got a lot done, and I think that saved me in many ways. But that's the core message of the visibility factor is you can work really hard, but if no one knows what you're doing or you're not putting it in front of people, then you're going to struggle to get to the next levels.
Yeah,
And so that's where visibility is important for you, for your work, for your team, so that they know what's happening. They're so busy, they can't possibly know what everybody's doing.
right.
So you have to find ways to do it for yourself.
Yeah, and I would say that, it's not about being the person who's bragging. It's about really sharing things that are of substance. I think you said a moment ago, it's not so much about me, me, me. It's about the work.
Hmm.
And I think people misunderstand that, which is what keeps them quiet, right?
Yeah, I just feel like when I recognized I'm just sharing facts, I'm just sharing information, I'm just sharing information that helps someone make a decision. It's
Right.
all about, and the reason the workbook is important is because the words you have to say allow people to hear you. So you have to position information in a way that they can hear it and recognize the value and impact that you're making. And so that's what I realized more and more after the book came out and before the workbook came out is
Right.
I need to build something now for that piece a little bit more.
Right. So you wrote the book, The Visibility Factor, a few years ago.
Yeah,
That's when,
21.
right. So,
2021.
yeah. So I think I met you at some point about it, maybe within about a year or two after that.
Hmm.
And then the workbook is coming out now in
Yes.
in 2025 and late 2025. And that's really almost kind of, I don't want to say closing the loop because whoever closes the loop completely, but it basically fills in some of the blanks, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think of it as the visibility factor provides a foundation of information. What is visibility? Why do you need it? What is imposter syndrome? How can it get in your way? How can you create your own visibility plan with all the actions and ideas I have in there so that you can really start to recognize that it's important? I feel like the workbook is taking it to the next level. So now that you know a lot of that stuff, and even if you haven't read the book, there are some pages of information, I'll say, that provide insights into what visibility is and all of that. But the intent is for people to take this scripts I give or examples I've given, or to help you think differently about some of the things that you're doing, even reflecting on your career and say, okay, now what do I want to do to really position myself for the next level? And
Hmm.
I've been using language around think about if I want to be a VP, I almost have to re-engineer what I'm doing now to
Hmm.
help people start to see that I'm ready for a VP.
Right.
So we used to have language like you have to do the job before you get the job.
Yeah.
And so it's starting to do things or get involved in things that you might see a VP do, or you might start talking about things in a way that's more strategic. So that's similar to what a VP would do. So it's starting to really pay attention and be intentional around what you're doing. And it allows people to see and hear you in a whole new way.
But it really, the workbook really gives you that place to really sketch it out and really
Hmm.
figure out tactically what you're going to do. Like get yourself in the mindset and the frame of mind to do it. It really sets the stage, but it takes you to that next step to actually figure out what you're going to do, not just, giving you the kind of thinking behind it, but really takes you to that next place of here's what I'm actually going to do. Here's what's going to work for me in the context of what situations I'm in at this point.
Yeah, I wanted it to be fun and creative and
Yeah.
leverage a lot of frameworks that I wasn't able to put into the visibility factor, but that I do with clients all the time.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of cool things in there. And in the beginning, it's about going back in time, looking at your career, looking at where you are now, looking at where you want to go, and really taking that deep dive
Hmm.
for just a little bit, which
Yeah.
many people don't do, but trying to do that for yourself because you deserve to understand, did something happen in your first job that is still impacting you now?
Mm.
Did you have an accidental career like I think I did in many ways where, people were nice and supported me and put me in the next role, but clearly on paper I wouldn't be a fit. So there's a lot of things that I think we do throughout our career that we just don't even realize we're holding on to.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start the workbook there and then go into, let's talk about your visibility now. Let's talk about your personal brand and your confidence, and then go into your challenges and how you're going to address them.
Yeah, I think those things are very important because you're right. Many of us have moved from one place to the next, maybe within the same organization, maybe from organization to organization, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes even crossing over to different industries. And yet we think I've heard people say to me, well, I kind of cheated. I haven't had to do a resume, in 20 years. I've heard some people say because I knew this one, I knew that one, and they invited me over. And I always say, you weren't cheating. You developed a reputation, you developed trust. People saw something in you and they wanted to work with you. But now you have to catch up and see those things within yourself that they wanted to work with so that you can pull those along with you and own them more in many
Mhm.
ways, right? I think
Yeah.
that's part of what you're asking people to see within themselves is these aren't just untruths that got you from place to place. They're actual real parts of you. But I think you're so busy just moving, you don't realize you can actually own them and say, you know what? There's something I did. Maybe it's not the most tangible thing, but it's the thing that really did, earn me the credibility to be invited to the next place. Like you were talking about moving into more of the IT space. There were things that you showed that made people want to pull you into that space. And so I think that it's a really amazing opportunity for people to get their hands on your workbook, to be able to open up and broaden the view of themselves professionally over time, to be able to do that. And you also offer some really fun activities in there, fun exercise. It's not just all about like taking, that deep dive into that serious, the serious recesses of our psyches and everything, which I think is important. But you also shared with me that there are some really fun activities in there too, which I think some people can learn a lot about themselves, or sometimes those more lighthearted or creative activities can actually help surface things about ourselves that we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. It's really interesting. It kind of almost symbolizes my journey a little bit of where I was probably very serious in many ways. Although people used to say, we can hear your laugh all the way across the building, Sue. It's just so contagious. But I think it's my own journey, especially since I became a coach and had my own business. I still was holding on to that more serious side of myself because that's what a professional coach does. That's what someone who, wants to work with me needs to see. But I think Susie DeVille, who wrote the book Buoyant, is brilliant. And she helped me start to see about creativity and how
Mm,
creativity can actually unleash a lot of things for you, especially if, we're very logical brained people. That's not the side we generally pull up and leverage. And so in writing the book, sometimes I would do a puzzle or I would draw a picture or I would, take her class, it's a brilliant class to help you for entrepreneurs to be more creative. And the more I did that, I felt like, oh my gosh, I have ideas. Now I have ideas to do this. So whenever you're stuck, it's a great way to do that. But a friend of mine was actually starting to build puzzle books to sell. And so I said, would you be willing to create some custom puzzles for me that I can use for challenges and that I could use as part of the launch of the workbook? And so she built me a crossword, she built me some word search puzzles that people can download and the solutions are there if you need them. I think it's just allowing people to try something different
yeah.
and still learn about some of the concepts from the workbook through different mediums, right?
Mhm.
Reading, I've got podcasts on the resources page that go along with the chapters. I wanted people to have different ways of taking the information in. It's one thing to read it, it's one thing to go through the workbook, activities and all of that. But I think it's also the stories in there, the case studies that are in there, and listening to podcasts. And I'm even going to include some things around AI prompts that you can use that might help you think about things differently for
Mm.
yourself. So I wanted to be more of a all-encompassing experience that people can leverage and use for their own journey, whatever that looks like for them.
I think that's great. I think it's the kind of resource that can really help a variety of people really tap into themselves and help
Hmm.
them get to the next step. And speaking of getting to the next step, what made you decide or what occurred when you left corporate and went out on your own? What was that
Hmm.
transition like for you?
Well, it was my decision to leave. The company was going through a merger with Heinz, and I stayed for the first year of that through the integration, basically. And I decided that, you know what, I've been getting my coaching certification at night. I'm teaching at a grad school part-time. I thought, you know what, I think it's time to go. I just felt like it was going to be the same old once that integration finished and the culture of the company was going to change a bit. And I just thought, I think it's time. And of course, that's scary after all of those years being at one company, knowing all the people that I knew, knowing everything to walk away from that. And in the workbook, I even put some of the decision making that I went through to make that decision. And I feel like when people are at the point of there's so much pain that change feels like the only option, when that happens, you have decisions, right? I can find another role in the company, maybe. I can leave this company and go to another one. I can choose to be, in my case, right? I could be a coach and have my own business. And I think I could have tried to be an IT director or a coach or pick out one of my past lives and move to another company and do that. But for me, it was, the scariest option is start your own business. I'd never had one before. So talk about being a risk taker. I had never had one before. I didn't know how to start a coaching business. Really, I would just gotten out of school for coaching, so to speak. So it was all about, okay, well, I have severance. If I'm going to do it, this is the time.
Ah,
And
okay.
I just knew that, and I wouldn't recommend for people to do this without having some financial support. Just let me share that with you. Taking the leap into this is a lot, and you do need to be able to support yourself while you're building a business. It takes
Right.
time. But for me, it was okay, I've got a supportive husband who's willing to let me do this crazy thing. And my children were getting older, so it wasn't like they were still, young and they needed me as much. They were in high school and, starting college. So a lot of that timing worked out well for me to be able to do what I needed to do. And it was just a tough decision to make. But once I made it, I'm a big believer in intuition. And once I made that decision, like the stomach ache I had been holding on to went away. And
Interesting.
so I knew that this was the right decision for me. And I told my boss, don't put me on the org chart. And he said, are you sure? It's scary, but yeah, I'm sure. And when I went into turn in my laptop, everyone was shocked because they just had no idea. I never told anyone that I was considering leaving. And it was a tough call, but I think it was definitely the right one, having moved into this world. But in terms of the transition into becoming your own business owner, I my biggest pieces of that were I lost my support of the Kraft name behind my name. So I had to stand on my own. I had to really have my own identity. And for so many years, I'd been able to leverage the Kraft identity. When I walked into a room, everybody would automatically assign me the Kraft, support and name and quality and brand to me. And now I had to create my own. And so I wasn't prepared for that to happen. Of course, I know it intellectually, but when you start having conversations, it is a bit of a disconnect. Like, oh my gosh, this is me now. I am the only one to speak up for what I want to do, and I have no team anymore. I had a team of people to help. I have to manage my own laptop. I don't have a team to do that for me anymore either. So all of these things that are just big changes, but the biggest one I think I recognized is that I was still hiding. So this is new, right? I have doubts. Can I do this? I've never done it before. So I spent a good amount of time building a website, coming up with a company name, building a business cards, all of those things. Was
Yeah.
I out talking to people to get them as clients? No. So it was a big moment of, oh my gosh, Sue, you're doing it again. What is happening? What is happening?
The
But
invisibility
the
factor.
invisibility. Yes, exactly. I was doing the opposite of what I was trying to do. And so I started writing a blog every day for 18 months. The intent with that was to change from being an IT director to being a coach, a leadership thought leader, starting to even just share my stories out with people. And that really helped me be more vulnerable, find my voice, and for other people to recognize their own situations in my stories because no one knew that I was going through all those things. I never told anyone. And so when I shared that I was getting too low into the details or I was, could be seen as micromanaging my team because I wasn't sure if they could do it as well as I could do, or, all of those silly things that you go through when you're becoming a manager,
Right.
I shared all that. And that is how I got my first clients. So it was a really unexpected win out of doing that. But that is where imposter syndrome comes back. The doubts come back. Whenever you try something new, you just have to be aware that it's going to happen. And then what are you going to do to keep taking action? And for me, that was starting to write.
And so when did you leave corporate? What year?
2015,
Okay. Oh, I
10
didn't realize
years.
I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Yeah, 10
Okay.
years. My anniversary of my company is coming up. Yeah, it's 10 years.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations. So you have a good track record now of really being able to reflect back on that. So in looking back on that change, what would be a key piece of advice you might give someone else who's not necessarily considering leaving, you know, a long career in corporate, but anybody who's thinking about making some sort of significant change or moving to the next step, what would be a key piece of advice you might give them?
I would tell them to look at what they have to offer and trust themselves because there's going to be doubts. You're going to have them. But when you continue to say, you know what, I figured this thing out in the past, or I've led this thing in the past and I've done it well, I'll figure this out too. Ask for help, try to get other people involved. And I did a much better job of that in this world than I did in my corporate world. It was just not something I grew up learning to do. And so now that I feel like I have a great group of people that I can reach out to if I have questions or give me advice on stuff, I have my own little board of advisors that I use to kind of bounce ideas off of or get advice on stuff where I'm stuck. But it's that trust in myself that I know I'll do the right thing. It's just I may not know the answer right now. And I
Yeah.
think we're a culture of, I want the answer right now. I have to have a plan. I have to know what to do. And I would say that the time and space that you give yourself to really just, I don't know, spend with yourself and figure out what it is you really want. Like, what do you want out of your business if that's what you decide to do? Or what do you want to do at the next company if you decide to do that? You get a chance to have a clean slate. You don't have to hold on to anything that's been there before and you can start fresh, but take the good things with you. Take the things with you that you can leverage in the new company And so many people who left Kraft when I did are really perceived as rock stars at the new companies that they went to, because we did get a lot of leadership experience and training and all of
Yeah.
that. So that has helped me tremendously in this world. And I knew that I could lean on that as a coach. And the stronger I've become at coaching and learning the things that people come to me with, and I can pretty well spot an imposter syndrome fairly quickly now, just
Yeah.
because of my own experience and what they say. It's just built a ton of confidence in me to know that I'll do the right thing for the clients and for myself.
Well, and along those lines, if somebody wanted to learn more about your services and to work with you and to find your books, what would be the best place for them? Where's the one-stop shopping place where they can find all of that?
Well, everything's on my website. So it's susanmbarber.com. And there's a page for the visibility factor, a page for the new workbook, my podcast. Everything is there. And I'm on LinkedIn a lot too. So happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn as well.
Great. Well, Susan, I am just so excited about I was already excited about the visibility factor, and I'm extra excited now about the workbook. I think it's going to help so many people. I'm certainly going to make sure people know about it. And I want to thank you for being here today because I think this is the epitome of work from the inside out. This is exactly the kind of work people need to do with themselves in order to get to that next place where they can find more meaning and fulfillment in their careers. So, thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you and all of the support you're giving to me, and the visibility factor in the workbook is amazing. And I can't wait to have you on my podcast, which is coming up soon. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us to learn from each other's audience, and they can learn from us too.
Yay! Thanks for sticking around to the end of my interview with Susan Barber. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 287. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. Did you know that ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts can help this podcast reach more people? Please help me to inspire more people to move their careers forward by clicking on the Apple Podcasts button and leave an honest rating and brief review. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, your support is acknowledged and appreciated. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.